we're going to begin with Alvin Graylin. Alvin is the China president of HTC, leading the Vive VR and phone business in the region. He's also the vice chairman of the Industry of VR Alliance, president of the $18 billion VR Venture Capital Alliance, and oversees the ViveX VR accelerators in Beijing and Shenzhen that we had a chance actually in our last year's platinum trip to go and visit. He's a dual master's at MIT and did his VR research at the HIT Lab, the Human Interface Lab at UW, and one of the leading thinkers, Tom Furness, a mutual friend of ours. So you might have heard about it from the Lawnmower Man or seeing it on TV. You're about to find out what is real and how you can use it. Please welcome to the stage, Alvin Graylin.
Sir.
I'll take it. Thank you, pal.
Thank you very much, Peter, and good afternoon. Welcome back from lunch. It's actually a real honor to be introduced by Peter, but it's, I guess, more an honor to be introduced by President Obama. So I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about VR. I think some of you guys, probably most of you guys have heard about it. Some of you actually experienced it yesterday with Dreamscape. Hopefully some of you actually go and see it again later today, as well as in the tech demo room. It's one of these technologies that unless you've actually tried it, it's really hard to explain and have you fully understand it. But hopefully in the next 15, 20 minutes, you'll get a better sense of kind of what's coming down the road in the next few years and how it's going to impact your industry. I chose this picture because I feel that VR and AR together as a technology that sometimes people misunderstood or underappreciate, because I really see it as a tsunami that's going to change almost every industry and every part of our lives. It sounds a little bit of a hyperbole, but I think you understand what I'm talking about at the end of this. And in about 10 years, everybody will spend most of their time in this. This is why I call it the ubiquitous VR. That's where it's going. And it's recently, I don't know if you guys have seen the 10-year challenge where people post pictures of 10 years ago and 10 years now. I'm actually proposing a challenge of 10 years from now, and today and 10 years from now, that's going to be what the world looks like. So the original 10-year challenge, who can guess what that was? President Kennedy in 1961 said that before the end of the decade, we got to send a man to the moon and return him back safely to Earth. And that started off a real mission, right? Something that changed really the industry and the world forever. By the end of the 60th decade, we had a man on the Earth, on the moon, and we had somebody who took a picture. You got to listen close. So we had somebody who can take a picture from the moon of the Earth, and it started a whole environmental movement, right? And because of that technology and because of that mission, it allowed lots of new technologies flourish and it changed the way that we live. It brought us Tang. Come on. Now, anybody with a headset can go to the moon, they can go to Mars, they can go throughout the universe.
And then you can see the outlines.
Being an astronaut used to be something that a few hundred people has ever done. Now anybody with a headset, a few $100s can do it. Right? That's the potential of this technology. It makes the democratization of every single potential experience available to everybody. So this is my 30-year challenge. In 1980, my parents brought me and my brother to the US. So this is the actual picture of me in 1980. And so my dad was an artist and my mom was a ballerina. And they brought us to the US and said, we want to give you a new opportunity. And you need to make the best possible advantage of that opportunity. And you need to make your biggest impact on this earth. Right? So that was my MTP, and when I was 8. So I started a little early. But I've actually kept it. That was what drove me for my entire career. I was very fortunate in 1990 to meet this gentleman, Tom Furness. He's seen as the godfather of VR. He's been doing VR for 55 years, did the first VR devices for the US Air Force back in the early 60s. And then I was very fortunate to meet this lady, Sher Wang, who's the chairman for HTC. And she recruited me to HTC saying, hey, we need to change the earth, change the world with VR. This is a technology that has real impact. And I said, hey, you know what? I believe you. I agree with you. I studied this 26 years ago, and I studied how VR can take education to a new level and get people to learn faster, to become more intelligent, and be able to achieve more. So when I heard what she wanted to do, it really attracted me to this company. So I've been fortunate that over the last 3 decades, I've gone through multiple waves of technology. Right? The PC wave, I actually bought the first XT, and I did my first programming on an Atari, on a Commodore, and an Amiga back in the early 80s. And then in the 90s, I came to China. I moved back to China and helped Intel start up their Intel offices there and brought consumer PCs to the consumers in China. In the 2000s, I came back again to China and brought mobile search to the Chinese market. We were actually the official search engine for all 3 Chinese mobile telecom carriers. And then now again, another wave is coming with 2010 with VR, and I'm fortunate again to be able to contribute to this new revolution. So over the last 100 years, we've been adding screens to our lives. Right? In the past, a little over 100 years ago, we had no screens. Now we have, in 1895 was when the first screens came, and then over the last 50 to 100 years, we kept adding screens, TVs, computers, phones, tablets. But starting 2016 was when VR first became available to consumers. And I think over the next 50 years, we're going to be taking all of those screens and removing them from our lives. It will be replaced by some form of a VR, AR device. And in some point, we'll go back to no screens, as what Peter was saying, when we start putting a chip back in our head sometime, and we're completely wirelessly connected. So specifically to China, in 2005, when I came back to China for a second time, this was the situation. The screen that people looked at the most from a work and connectivity perspective was a PC. There was 94 million active internet users. They were using it 1.8 hours a day. A grand total of 169 million hours of activity screen time a day. 2015, when I was first looking at VR again, it was 400 million mobile users on the internet there, using it 3 hours a day for about 1.2 billion hours a day. So then over that 10 years, 7x growth. 2025, this is where I really see where that 10-year challenge is going. It's going to be 1.2 billion people using it 10 hours a day or more, going to about 12 billion hours of screen time a day. 10x growth. Right. I think 10 is the number that everybody says. If something grows by 10x, it's a great thing. If something changes your life by 10x, it's going to change the world and be accepted. So I'll give you lots of examples of what's going to happen over the next 10 years where things are going to grow by 10x or more. So before, our key interface to the world were keyboards, mice, and the touchscreen. In fact, I don't know how many of you guys know, but the first touchscreen in the world was actually made by HTC on a Windows CE device. But the next few years, these are the ways that we're going to be interacting with our devices, using computer vision to track your hands and fingers, having haptic devices that let you feel every part of the world that you're in, being able to smell things that you're actually doing, being able to hold on to accessories and use them as if you were in the real world. And then, in fact, to be able to take brain signals through BCI and be able to think something and have it be able to change the world that you're in. In fact, just 3 weeks ago, we announced something at CES, the eye control that I think Philip was talking about this morning, using eye tracking to integrate with VR to give you more natural ability to communicate, to give you more natural ability to track what you're looking at and do analytics, and give you the ability to be able to control games or other things very efficiently. In fact, eye tracking was used in Air Force helmets to be able to lock into where a missile was going, because that worked a lot better than using other devices by hand. So over the next few years, essentially all of the senses that we have as humans will become linked to a device that sits on our body or on our head. Right? That's kind of where the destiny of this technology is going to. And it's probably the closest thing to having a dream while you're awake and being able to fully control and manage a dream is a VR device. There's been a lot of debate, what's bigger, AR or VR, or is VR dying and whatever. But one of the most prominent investors in Silicon Valley just about 2-3 weeks ago said this, that he thinks long-term, VR will be 1,000 times more important than AR. I'm not sure I agree with his numbers, but I think what's more important is that, hey, this is the technology that will become accepted. It will be part of our daily lives. If you look at the numbers from the analysts, these are the smartest guys in the world looking at all the industries, they don't even agree. You look at the guys on top here, the CSS guy said, essentially in the next 5 years, 90% of the industry will be VR. Then you look at the DigiCapital guys, and they said 90% of the industry would be AR. So who do you believe? But it doesn't matter, because what I really want people to notice is the numbers that we're talking about. $100 billion, $209 billion, $547 billion are the size of the markets that are being predicted by these analysts. And just give you some reference context, the size of the entire PC industry, about $100 billion. The size of the entire mobile phone industry, about $400 billion. So there's a potential for this technology, on the worst case, to be as large as the current PC industry in 5-6 years. But one good thing one good piece of news, no matter which forecast you believe in, is I look at the current data. And currently, we are the market leader globally, 36% total global revenue share for VR, and 49% total revenue share in China for VR. So for us, I think in our position as a market leader, we really need to take an important stance to help grow the market. That's one thing that we tell ourselves every day, is that we need to do more than just think about today's revenues. We need to make sure that the industry grows smoothly over time. So this is kind of where we see things going in 5-7 years. A device that becomes AR when you want to augment something, it becomes opaque. It becomes VR when you need it, when you need to travel to a different place or to a different world. Right? And it's light and something that you can carry and wear with you all day. You might think, oh, that's really far away. And what is it going to look like in the next couple of years? This is what we kind of think it's going to look like. A device that you put on. It might have cameras in the front that then scans your room, turns every wall, every piece of furniture into a virtual object. And I can put virtual screens on and be able to project. So I don't remember who said that it's going to replace all the screens and all the TVs in your house. Absolutely, that's going to happen. In fact, it's going to replace all the windows that you have and let you have a different view. This particular child is playing a game where his wall is now the bottom of a dungeon. Right? That's possible in technology today. Here's an actual footage of a SDK that we give to developers, allowing them to scan a real office. So you can put a virtual object into this real office that's being brought in through the cameras in front of our devices. And not only does it see things, it actually knows what's there. You see this little board? It has depth. It knows that that board is in front of something else, and that little virtual fish can go behind it. Right? That allows you to do a certain level of interaction that is not possible today with any other technology. So in the 1990s, when I first was using VR, this was the kind of devices this was the exact kind of devices I was using. Do you know what it was called, by the way? This is actually interesting. Anybody know the name of this device? It's called the iPhone, EYE phone. Yeah, so VPL, who made the first VR kind of commercial device, even though they were together, that system was a couple $100,000, but it was called the iPhone. So they were definitely seeing the future. This is what these kind of devices look like today. Standalone devices, does not need to connect to a workstation or a computer, completely wireless. You can move around an entire room. There's not all this thing tethered to you, and the whole thing costs you $600. Right, you could play games with it, you could play sports, and you could travel to a different world. And you can also do work with it. I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize. They always think that VR is just about gaming. In fact, I think Peter mentioned Bell helicopters. Just a few months ago, we've been working with them on this project. In 6 months, they built a helicopter from concept to reality. Right? This industry normally builds planes in 5 to 7 years. They did it in 6 months. Right? This is an actual quote from their team. That's amazing. To have a 10x productivity increase on a product this complex. It's just not possible without this kind of technology. They did all their prototyping, all their testing, all their user research, all their usability in VR, and then they just built it, and it worked. You know, another work area is the office. I've been actually, at lunchtime, I was sitting next to a gentleman that was in the real estate business, and we were talking about how it's going to change the real estate. It's going to make location irrelevant. You know, right now, the key, the mantra of real estate is location, location, location. But when you can put on a headset and be productive or be happy anywhere, why do you need to be in a specific place that is more expensive, more crowded, harder to commute to? It's going to bring down rental costs for offices. It's going to bring down real estate costs for homes. In fact, if you want to work and you want to type, we worked with Logitech to be able to take your keyboard and be able to see it with your headset on and see every key's movement and see your hands in front of it. Right? That allows you to work in the way that you already do today. It replaces the monitor that you have. But at the same time, when you want, you could be working on the front of a beach and still be able to be productive. So that brings your talent pool up 10x. Right? If before you were hiring in a metropolitan area, now you can hire from anywhere in the world the best talent, probably for a lot less money, and they can be happier, and you can be more productive. We probably all spent many hours getting here, whether by plane or train or automobile, right? And costing a lot of money. What if we could do these kind of meetings in VR? In fact, that was the plan from Peter and I and Philip earlier this year was, can we do this entire thing in VR? But due to a few technical difficulties, we couldn't do it. But I think next year, we could definitely do this. Right? This is actually, the bottom little video is an actual video of me and my team in Shenzhen, Beijing, and Shanghai having a weekly meeting using VR. Right? So when you can do this, it means that you don't have to be in the same offices anymore. You can be productive. When you can have hundreds of people, which we actually did, the bottom right was a conference we did last year where we brought hundreds of customers into a place where they put on a headset and saw the virtual environment and the real environment in the same place. And then we had speakers from around the world dial in their VR headset. You could travel to anywhere in the world now, right? You could put on a headset and feel like you're in a different location. It may not be exactly the same as traveling and all the nuances of being there, but you could go and try it and say, hey, you know what? I really like this place. I want to go there for real. But now I can go to 10 times more places and learn 10 times more culture than I did before. Education. This is what got me started loving VR, was the potential of using VR to educate. And this is kind of stuff that's available today. We are now enabling classrooms, 50 students at a time, put on their headset and go on a field trip on every class. Right? As a child, I think we all remember how fun it was to go on a field trip. Now you can go on a field trip anytime and bring that excitement to the students. And that's what really enables education, enables learning, is when people are excited about what they're doing. We're one of the startups that we invested in Shanghai there, in Shenzhen, they're actually working with these classrooms to do VR plus real experiment learning, where they have different topics and they have experiments, and then they see it in VR. And kids this age can essentially travel in space or go underwater or do virtual experiments, and they're learning. They're learning so much more. In fact, we did a study, and we broke up kids between average kids, the kind of underperformers, and then the whiz kids. And the whiz kids in the normal class underperformed the underachievers in the VR class. What does this tell us? Is that every single child has the potential to be a whiz kid, to be a super learner. They just haven't been taught the right way. And we've been teaching them using a method where it's all about putting it on the board or seeing a piece of paper, when they wanted to learn by touching it, when they wanted to learn by experiencing. We can't talk about VR without a little bit of gaming. So this was the first game I played with, actually. In 1972 was the game named Pong. And I think one of you guys, if you guys have a chance, go to the tech demo, and you'll be able to see this new game by the same gentleman, Nolan Bushnell, started a company, and they're making Pong into something called Ping, which Peter referred to, where you're using your full body to be able to interact with these different with these virtual balls and have multiplayers like this. And in terms of how much does VR versus mobile versus PC, how much excitement does that gaming add to you or change in your life? We did an actual study, and we separated, we did the same app, it's called Superhot. It was available on PCs, on phones, and on VR devices, and we measured their heart rate and the EDA, which is the skin conductance, and we found out that the excitement level actually rose by 8x versus from mobile to VR for the same exact game content. You can then also say, hey, before you're sitting there to play a game. And then people said, okay, you have a room size to play a game. Now you actually have an entire field. These guys made a game where you can go on a football field and just walk around freely in an entire field, 100 meter by 100 meter field, and in a virtual village. Right? That's the kind of freedom and exploration that are going to get people excited, where you can mix, learning and education together and gaming together. Here's healthcare applications. If you're in the healthcare industry, reduction of pain and chronic pain is a major issue. This is one of our other invested companies, Realitaire, who worked with Stanford Hospital to be able to cure a person who had left arm pain by moving his right arm and showing his head in his goggles, his left arm moving. Within a few sessions, his pain went away permanently. Right? That shows the plasticity of our brains. Here's a brand new research we just did with Tsinghua University, the MIT of China. This is a picture that's very common today in retirement homes. People who all they do every day is watch TV, and it's sad and it's lonely. We want to see what it would be like to get some of these elderly folks to try VR. And here's the result that we got. The emotional arousal score changed by 73%. What does that really mean? We actually did a metrics. Watching TV versus sitting in bed is going from 2.1 to 2.7. But your child visiting you is 3.7. Playing VR is 3.71. So that's almost as good as having your child visit you, in a retirement home. I don't know, one of the biggest complaints that elderly have is that nobody visits them. Now you put on this headset, and they're getting that same type of happiness, right? Satisfaction.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I gotta absolutely.
Out of all of the stuff that you've showed me, I mean, for me, that is an unexpected result with huge implications. We have so many elderly who are under emotionally nourished.
Absolutely, and it's actually not just emotional, it's actually a health impact. They've shown that if you're lonely, your chance of dying from heart disease is twice as high as if you're a happy, satisfied person. 1989, I remember buying one of these devices, Nordic Track. Who has one in their house at some point? Okay, a few people. I was like, I want to be that guy. This is what they're doing now. These guys are now making Nordic Track devices that are connected to our VR devices, so you can do this. You could be riding a bike, but flying through a virtual world and playing with dragons and doing whatever. The issue with these devices, you bring them home, they work for a week, and then they become the most expensive coat hanger you have in your house. With this, you're motivated to go back and use it every day because you're going into a different place, you're having an adventure. In fact, they have 30,000 videos that are tied to this device that you can watch, and it moves with you. Esports, right? This is like the big thing that's happening recently. This is what an esport athlete looks like today. We really see esports athletes and normal athletes coming together. I don't know how many of you guys know this guy, Mayweather. He actually made his own VR app and made his own VR gym, and he's going and having people train in VR. We're working with McLaren. I don't know how many of you guys are F1 fans. Right. Whoo! Okay. We worked with them to do the first VR-based esport competition in the world. 30,000 people did it last year. This year, do you know how many people did it? 500,000 people entered this year's VR esport competition with F1 with McLaren. And do you know, anybody know who this is? Fernando Alonso. Okay, he's one of the top 2 or 3 F1 drivers ever. He's won probably more championships than almost anyone. And when he tried our device just a couple months ago in Abu Dhabi, when he retired on his last F1 race, he said, "Wow, this device will let me go back into being a driver again when I'm at home and want to feel what it's like to be on the track." Right. That was when he said that during the interview. I was like, man, this is a guy who has done so much, and he's going to miss this sport. But although last weekend he just won the Daytona 500, by the way, so he switched from F1 to other sports. But he's still driving. But he did say, I think F1 is something that he's going to love forever. He's been doing it for 20 years, and we actually made a specific device with McLaren. So the F1, the esport competition this year is going to be so much more real. These guys are now not just using computers and VR to race. One of the parts of that esport race was they had to drive a McLaren 570S, or actually 570 GT, on a real track as part of the competition. And the guy who won is actually a F3 driver, and he will be part of the actual physical race team in the coming years. So the 2 sports are fully transferable. Being able to do something in VR versus being able to do something in a real car becomes very, very transferable. In fact, they just last week released something that I really am excited about. They're saying, hey, what is F1 going to look like a few years from now? These tracks are not going to be just a flat track. They're going to be up and down and lots of banks. And the suits that these guys are wearing are space suits, right? And they're going to augment the drivers with super intelligent co-pilots with AR helmets that look like pilots. This is where the future is going. And we're in LA, we can't get away from Hollywood. I don't know how many people watched Ready Player One? All right. If you watched it, you'll know what I'm talking about. But, Steven Spielberg actually made this movie in VR using the Vive device over the last few years. He imagined what it was like and directed these players, these actors, in a virtual world. That's what's so exciting, what's possible. And even though this movie was made in a 2D form, all of that content was made in 3D, and we actually turned that into a real VR game you can download and play at home. So you could be the character in the movie. I could either do frame grabs, or I could do it. And one of the scenes in there is talking about taking, essentially containers or trailers and stacking them up. People are now thinking about doing that, but who wants to live in a 200 square foot apartment? But if you could put on a headset and turn that 200 square foot apartment into a waterfront apartment or a oceanside apartment, wouldn't that be great? It makes things a lot more livable, and given the cost of real estate in center cities these days, that makes a lot of sense. But can you really live in VR? We had a guy who spent 30 days straight in VR using our devices, and he wasn't just there playing games. He was actually living and working. He was a VR developer, and he spent anywhere between 5 and 15 hours a day. Actually started at about 5 and ended up essentially sleeping in VR. And he came out healthier than he did when he went in, because he was moving around in VR all day versus using a keyboard and typing all day. So my last message to you guys is, the world is changing. You can see that no matter what industry you're in, it's going to get disrupted. It's going to change, and you need to change your mindset. Right? This technology has huge potential, and it makes everything abundant. So how will you and your company prepare for this 10-year challenge? Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you.